of note. Then it was once a week. Now there are so many each week across our cities that you can't count them. And what I hear from mayors is really they're starting to will start to lose the ability to focus on reducing emissions because they've got to spend all their effort on just coping with the disaster that has just happened. So yeah, that exactly as you say, this is an investment in our future. It's not a cost.
Yeah. I suppose the last reflection here is there clearly are lots of cool things happening in the world. I mean, you know, the doubling of renewable energy every 2.5 years, and some of the things you just pointed to with cities, and also in partnership with government. But I don't know, I get a feeling talking to people around the room that given we've got 5 years to halve emissions and to have a 50-50 chance of hitting net zero in 2050, that there needs to be perhaps a greater sense of urgency on behalf of the national governments and other players in this space, whether it be the international banks and all kinds of other vital players in this, but particularly the governments, because they set the policy and the course, to really strive much harder. Some people have said to me, oh, you know what, this COP here, we're all looking forward to Brazil. Oh, that's great, but Brazil, that means we're 4 years away from halving emissions. Yeah, I mean, every day seems to count right now, and you don't get that sense of urgency that every day counts. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. There's a lack of sense of urgency, even though everybody knows how desperately urgent the situation is. But I think part of the problem is it's sort of structural. These COPs they're not set up for that urgency to really come across. I'd like to see a change where it's less about negotiation. We need that going on in the background, but it's more about implementation. So do what we do in the city space. Every year, cities, governors, national governments come, they report on how they've delivered in the last year. So there's a stock take every year, not every 5 years. They set out what they're going to do for the next 12 months, not 20 years ahead. And then we all focus on that and collaborate on how we can achieve it.
That's a really good point. Actually, I remember after the Paris Agreement, when I was still working at the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change, there was a big debate among the then head Cristiano, but also others, about what then we do with the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change. Now we have the Paris Agreement, and now it's about implementation. And one thing was, we need to now sweep away all those work programs that have been acquired over the last, well, not quite since 1992, but quite close. And yet I still see on the screens here there's a meeting of the something framework on something else, which I know jolly well was agreed 15 years ago, which actually has been superseded by Paris. So there's a lot of excess baggage on the ship that could just be put on, over the side, right? And we could focus, as you say, on the core challenge, which is a stock take, a report, and a definite plan for the next 12 months by each nation.
Exactly.
It makes so much sense.
Yeah, I love excess baggage is the right way of putting it. And I'm a big believer in multilateralism. We need COPs, we need them to succeed, but let's set them up to succeed by focusing on what matters.
Yeah.
Have you done what you said you'd done against science? Well, first of all, have you got a science-based target? We need all of our member cities have to have science-based targets. Paris Agreement compliant to be a member. All countries should have them with the new NDCs. You've got the target. Have you delivered against it? What are you going to do for the next year to stay on track? One of the things we're doing to kind of reinvent within C40 is it's already a condition of membership to have a Paris Agreement compliant plan. Now it's going to be, as agreed last week, to have an annual climate budget. So you marry the annual financial budget setting process against the carbon budget target. So you've got to show you're spending money that will deliver the target. I'd like to see every government do the same thing. If they had that and we brought that here every year, we'd have a real understanding of what was happening and what needs to happen.
Yeah, super. Mark, thanks very much indeed. That was a great insight, and I think very helpful also to the audience out there to actually understand what we could do to make this thing faster and quicker. Yeah, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
So building on the theme of cities and whether the COP is really working for them, I'm absolutely delighted to have with me Mohamed Sefiani, who is the mayor of the municipality of Chef Chaouen in Morocco, and he's also vice president of ICLEI, which is another cities network, the local governments for sustainability. So nice to see you here. Yeah, I suppose the question is these annual COPs, I mean, they need to hear the voice of the cities. Do you feel that the governments, the national governments, really listen to the cities who are really at the center of climate change? Because most people live in cities now. What's your feeling on this, Mayor?
Thank you very much for inviting me in this very interesting interview. I think that I am optimistic because I participated in the COP since 2015, COP29 in Paris, and we know the Paris Agreement. And in Paris, we had one meeting. This was the first meeting of the 1,000 local leaders with Mayor of Paris, Anne Hidalgo. And since 2015 until now, cities are more present in COPs, not only to show best practice or to share best ideas, but in some global initiative adopted by the presidency of the COP, whose cities are in the heart of this initiative. Last year, for example, we had the CHAMP initiative in Dubai. And until now, more than 74 countries will endorse this initiative. What means initiative? It means that the multi-level action that recognizing the role of cities and subnational government on that. Because more than 70% of emissions comes from cities. And in 2050, more than 70% of the global population will live in cities. But in negotiations, cities don't have a seat. And before, don't listen to cities. Now is step by step, cities is in the heart, because we are convinced without cities and regions, we can't implement the Paris Agreement.
So this is a good point. So now cities in quite a few countries actually are part of the creation of the new revised national climate plans, the NDCs. So now you're in the same seat with the governments working on the plans for the country.
Yes, not the same, but the starting of hearing, listening, and contributing and measuring. That's why CHAMP. 2 years ago, this was third initiative to organize that multi-level action. Because 4 years ago, 5 years ago, we didn't hear about multi-level action. We didn't about cities like we hear now.
Right.
We don't have what we want now. But step by step, we have more presence, more responsibility in the implementation of the climate agenda.
So what do you want as a mayor and as a vice president of ICLEI to happen at the end of this COP? Is it the finance?
Yes. We in ICLEI is the largest network of sustainable cities, more than 2,500 cities in the world, and more than 700 experts in the world. We work together and to support cities to have a climate action plan and to assist cities to have access to finance. Now it's easy now to have this finance, to access to international finance. But we are starting. I think that we have to see in this COP a great decision to have more facility to access to cities, because now, until now, less than 10% from climate finance goes to cities.
Right.
It's nothing, but
That's
we
crazy.
want to, and we want to not only mitigation, we want also adaptation, because now less than 20% of this climate finance go to adaptation. And ICLEI is coordinating the LGMA. ICLEI now is alone, because there are many networks.
Yeah.
And we are working in LGMA. LGMA is local government and municipal authorities. We coordinate all the networks as GCOM, as UCLG, C40, and others. And very important to the voice of city was heard at the international level.
I've got you, Mayor. Thank you very much. Stay with us. So finally, we have Carissa Kasper, who is Conservation International's Director of Climate Policy. And it's kind of Nature Day tomorrow, so it's just before that. That's super. Okay, I suppose the question again, why is a group like Conservation International, the green groups we might call you, the NGOs, why are they so important to this process, and are you being listened to by the governments?
That's a great question. Thank you so much for having me, Nick, today. And I completely agree with Mohammed, actually, that we have seen, actually, since Paris, this is my 9th COP, we have seen an increase in the amount of attention that nature as a climate solution is getting in the COP spaces. And a lot of this actually is because of the work that Conservation International, coalitions like Nature for Climate, the coalition are pushing these messages, like making sure that these messages are getting into the hands of government, and making sure that governments and the COP process is really aware that nature is 30% of the solution to meeting the Paris Agreement. And so we have seen at COP26, especially last year at COP28, there was a lot of attention on nature. There's a little bit of an ebb and flow. This year's a little bit of an ebb year. Tomorrow is Nature Day. We're very excited to have a Nature Day at COP this year, where we get to really have the pedestal moment for nature. But within the headline goal for this COP around finance, nature hasn't been super prominent in that conversation. And so Nature for Climate Coalition, which Conservation International and over 75 organizations have signed on to a letter that was released today to call for the finance goal to reflect the really disproportionate nature finance gap, right? Like, as I said, it's 30% of the solution, but right now it's only getting 3% of the finance. And
right. So you're only getting 4% of the finance, and they're only getting 3%.
Yeah, exactly.
What the devil's going on, right?
Exactly.
You guys need to join forces.
And so we'll see how the letter is reacted to, and once the negotiations kind of come to a close. But we really do hope that it.
Last quick question to you. 5 years to go to 2030. It's the same question. Some people feel the governments are sort of jogging a little bit along on the old climate change challenge. Are there some rockets we can fire up there, to get them moving? Because we can't have each year go by to 2030 with these little steps forward. That's nice to have some baby steps. We all love babies, right? But now we've got to be grown up. And we have no time. We don't have time. There needs to be an emergency brake on the climate change. There needs to be emergency action. This could be a war against humanity if we don't deal with it. I know we have a lot of problems in the world. So, do governments need to step up big time?
100%. They do. I think what's missing sometimes from these conversations is that actually there is a lot of action happening on the ground, but this COP is very important because one of the really big missing pieces is the finance, right? We know it works on the ground. We know that Indigenous peoples and local communities are effective stewards of nature and biodiversity, but they're not getting money. We hear from them that that they need more rights and resources to be more effective stewards. And so if we get the finance decision right at this COP, then it really can be a powerful propeller to making sure that the nature finance gap is closed, that cities are getting more money, that Indigenous peoples and local communities are getting more money, that we're stopping the finance flows that are still driving deforestation, that are still funding fossil fuels. And so I think that this one, it really can send a big signal that governments need to step up, but not only governments, right? It's the private sector, it's the whole global economy, and I think that they can send a really important message.
We had the private sector on earlier. They said they were stepping up. So I'm sorry I have to stop it here, but we are just right out of time. In fact, we're well over time, and I will get my bottom spanked very shortly from people. But we got everybody on, nearly all the stakeholders, and $1 trillion a year is not enough, but it's a good start if it happens. Yes? Yes. Okay. Thank you so much indeed for being with us.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Let's move on. I'm doing very well indeed. Yes, I think we're live now. Okay, so just a few minutes ago we heard from representatives from business and cities, youth organizations, as well as some green groups as well. So that was amazing about COP29. Is it a success or a failure? Maybe it's just both, but really about the fact that governments really have to pull the emergency brake and step up and move on. So we've got some other guests here now to kind of understand some of these issues too. And we have with us Fadil Kaboub, who is Senior Advisor for Power Shift Africa. We've had you on the show before. We had you on last year with the Non-Fossil Fuel Proliferation Treaty. That was great. And Barbara Rosen-Jacobson, who's a Senior Advocacy Advisor for Mercy Corps. So welcome, everybody.
For those that might not have been following all of this and might not be really up to snuff about this, so what was really at stake here, and from for you personally, organizations, when it comes to accomplishing anything at the COP?
Yeah, thank you for that question. Thank you for having me. There's a lot at stake this COP, and especially the creation of a new climate finance goal. That is the main thing that is going to be agreed on here, and we are really pushing for this to be ambitious so that we can get those outcomes, achieve the goals of the Paris Agreement that we have to achieve. It's very important that it actually meets the needs and priorities of developing countries, of the people who need it most. So that's what we're really pushing for here.
Thank you, Barbara. So Fadel, your perspective, please.
Well, from a global south perspective, we've designated this as the Climate Finance COP. And from an African perspective, global south perspective, climate finance is development finance. And we're talking about the goal for this COP is to move from the small billions to the trillions, which is really, people when they hear trillions, they, oh, this is a lot of money, it's unaffordable. This is, when we talk about trillions, it's a good faith down payment towards the climate action that is long overdue. That's a very important thing to acknowledge here, so that we don't go back to the small billions. So by the end of this week, if we're not into the T's, the trillions, and this is definitely a failure. If we're into the T's, then we know that we're moving in the right direction. But then more than the quantum, it's the quality of finance. Are we talking about loans and more economic entrapment? Or we're talking about grants? Are we talking about cancellation of all climate-related debts that some countries had to accumulate over the last several years because of severe climate events? Are we talking about transfer of life-saving technologies to manufacture and deploy the building blocks of climate resilience and adaptation, like the renewable energy infrastructure that's needed, the clean cooking infrastructure, the clean transportation infrastructure? That's the quality of finance we want. But instead, we still hear a lot of the M word, mobilizing money. Mobilizing meaning we'll find private sector lenders to give you money. We'll try our best to reduce the cost of capital, so you still have to pay interest on these loans, but we'll try to make it affordable. We'll try to figure out market-based solutions to bring in quote unquote low-quality climate finance, what I would refer to. So this is really the core of the debate. The quantity needs to be in the trillions, the quality needs to be transformative, not debt-inducing and adding to the problems that we're already facing.
Thank you, Fadel. Would you like to add, Barbara?
Yes, I think I agree with everything that was just said, but I would just like to add that in addition to the need for a grants-based goal that does not exacerbate existing debt. It's also very important that part of this is allocated to adaptation and to loss and damage. Because what we're seeing now, what we're kind of learning from the 100 billion goal that we have now, is that if we don't do it, a lot will go to mitigation, and adaptation and loss and damage will be severely underfunded. Whereas those are actually the needs of the most vulnerable communities that are suffering from the impacts of climate change.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Can I just say, if they do agree here on a, I know you talked about the quality, of course, and things like that, but if it is $1 trillion or just over $1 trillion, and it's not got too many strings attached, is that an okay start, or do you feel it has to be more than that?
Go ahead.
I think it needs to be both. It needs to be the 1.3 trillion that the developing countries have asked for as the starting point, the minimum, as what I call the good faith down payment towards the kind of climate finance we need. But without the quality, I think we're not really moving forward. There's a lot of talk now about the global investment goal, which developed countries are pushing for. I think the global investment goal, in combination with CBAM regulations, the Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism of the EU, which other countries also are introducing soon, is the most dangerous combination we will see in the next 10 years in the climate finance space. And I'll explain why. When I say CBAM, that's a European Union CBAM, which is a carbon border tax. The UK, as you know, is rolling out its CBAM soon. The US, Canada, Australia, Japan are preparing CBAM-like regulations soon. Now, think of this combination. Take the example of green steel manufacturing in Mauritania, which is huge renewable energy infrastructure, because steel is very energy intensive, to produce green steel. Not for Mauritania, not for the African continent, but green steel that will be exported back to the EU for industrial purposes, except it's green, so it doesn't pay the CBAM tax. So from an EU perspective, the combination of the two produces two things. One, you have an inflation management tool that keeps the cost of steel low, so it's an inflation management for the EU. And number two, it's a trade weapon against the EU's competitors, such as steel coming from Japan, from Korea, from Brazil, which is not green yet. So I think with the big push for this climate finance being global investment goal, as in lots of green industrialization, quote unquote, manufacturing in the global south, which is designed to serve this purpose for the global north. And it's going to be labeled climate finance, but effectively what it does, it's green extractivism using low-cost labor, low-cost energy in the global south, and locking the global south in the same low value-added manufacturing extractivism position at the bottom of the global value chain, at the at the bottom of the hierarchy. And that is not the kind of transformative climate finance we want.
Yeah, well, it's such a big topic. I'd love to debate this for hours now. You got me going here. But anyway, I can't. So please carry on.
Yeah, I think this only underscores that we actually need to have a definition of climate finance, and we really clearly need to define what it is and what it is not. And we are now seeing a lot of kind of false solutions getting into the negotiation text that are actually not about the NCQG. The NCQG is about the provision of finance from developed countries to developing countries based on their historic responsibility and their capabilities. And that is the core of the NCQG. That is what the conversations should be about. And just returning to your question, that is why it's so important that it's not just about the quantum itself, but also about the quality, and that these two need to go hand in hand. If we have a low quantum, but with high quality finance, the finance will be divided over a very small amount of finance will be divided over the different needs, and it will not cover everything that is needed. If we have a very high quantum but with low quality finance, it will not reach those who need it most, and it will not respond to what they actually need in terms of adaptation and loss and damage finance.
This is very complex, Nick. I think you have one more question.
Well,
right?
I just, it always used to be that the European countries, for example, were accused of just basically extracting the raw materials from Africa, shipping them out and making the product somewhere else, right? is it not a better step to have the manufacturing in Mauritania so that it can become part of the Mauritanian economy and the workers there will learn how to build green steel, and then there could be a chance of Mauritanians, you know what I mean? It seems a step better than the past. And that's my question. And the other question, I suppose, is the EU are doing all these kinds of things, but if you look at the world around you right now, I can't see any group of nations that are actually at least trying to meet their climate targets. When you look at the US, I mean the Chinese, maybe they're on track, I don't know. But you look at other countries like Russia, but maybe I shouldn't mention Russia, and the US, Canada. So if they've got it wrong, I think that's worth criticizing. If they're trying to get it right, then obviously need help to get it perfect. But I feel a little nervous that it's the EU that's getting bashed when so many other of the larger economies are nowhere near meeting their NDCs. Sorry, if I just want to...
No, not at all. This is
I think
why
you were
we're
bashing
here.
more than just the EU, actually.
Yeah. I think it's the whole
Okay.
industrialized world,
Yeah.
because
Okay.
I
That's
think
good
you've
then.
heard me say this before, which is we can't decarbonize a system that hasn't been structurally and economically decolonized yet. By
Right.
which I mean the following. I mean, a lot of people say, come on, colonialism is over. No, it's not. There are persistent structures, economic structures, that must be transformed in order for us to move forward globally in terms of climate action. And here's what I mean. Colonialism established a particular set of economic functions that were imposed on Africa. Number one, we're supposed to be the place for cheap raw materials for the industrialized world. We still play that function to this day. Number two, we're supposed to be the consumers of technologies and industrial output from the global north. We still play that function to this day. And number three, and most importantly, we're supposed to be the place where obsolete technologies, assembly line manufacturing that's no longer needed in the
Gets
industrialized
dumped,
world
yeah.
is outsourced to us under the
Yeah.
label of development, cooperation, job creation, technical assistance.
Yeah.
But effectively what it does is that it locks us permanently
Right.
at the bottom of the global value chain. And we still play that role today. So
Right.
colonial economic structures were not designed for development. Colonialism was not about development. It was
This is
about
a big topic.
extraction. Colonialism was not designed for a just
So, but
transition
in the
or
short-
SDGs.
Okay, but in the short way, how could they make the green steel manufacturing something that both Africa and, say, the EU could benefit from? There must be one way of doing it.
Of course there is
Yeah.
a way. So now take the African continent as a block or
Yeah.
as regional blocks. What we have is all the strategic minerals that we need for real industrial policies.
Right.
As a continent, we have the economies of scale, which is what you need for industrialization. We have the youngest labor force on the planet.
Okay, but
So
quickly,
what is
'cause we need to
missing?
move on.
This
Yeah.
is where Europe and the rest of the world comes in. What is missing is access to the manufacturing technology, which
Yeah.
is available in Europe, in China, in Japan, in the US. We're saying, let's have real partnership.
Right. So
Let's
if you get
design.
if you get access to the technology, then it starts becoming a partnership, and it's a chance for Mauritania, for example, to then grow its economy in a sustainable way with sustainable steel.
And not to be locked only
Yeah.
in producing steel, but
Yeah.
in manufacturing the
Got it.
high value-added
Got it.
products.
That's a good
Because
point.
there's a big prize for everybody, and we can come back.
Yeah,
to
yeah,
it.
yeah.
Well, it's a big topic, and it's important. But let's refocus back on the COP here and what's happening. And Barbara, there is much talk about this COP being sort of just more of a transition. At the real big event is going to be in Rio, and also, of course, the NDCs are going to be evaluated, and of course, also we have it's 30-year anniversary, so to speak. So what needs to happen now between this COP and the Rio COP, Barbara? What are the really big hurdles that we really need to turn over or jump over?
Well, I think the most important hurdle and the most urgent one is achieving a big outcome at this COP. This COP
It's
will
not over
really-
yet.
Exactly. There's still a lot to play for, and this COP will really set the ambition that we need or not for the NDCs, and that will determine a positive outcome in Brazil. So if there is going to be very ambitious and an ambitious outcome on the finance goal, then we will also have more likely a higher chance of getting those ambitious NDCs that we need. But if not, we are really risking not achieving the goals of the Paris Agreement. And so I think in terms of, you know, is this COP important or not? I think this COP is critically important to be able to achieve what we want to achieve in Brazil.
Thank you, Barbara. Fadel, your thoughts, please.
if this COP is going to be a stepping stone to the next one, it needs to be a step up, not a step down, in terms of quantity and quality. So I think that the next couple of days are going to be extremely important. We're going to see the latest draft of the NCQG tonight at some point, and depending on what comes out of that text, I can give you a better answer. But so far, let's not kill the process, because it's happening. It's very important to recognize that the G77, the developing countries, I just came out of a press conference with G77 and AGN, the Africa Group of Negotiators, and the LMDC group. They made it very clear that we want a headline quantum of 1.3 trillion with a T, not the billions.
The trillion is important.
Or M.
Wow. and we want the quality of finance to deliver the kind of transformation. If we get an agreement, then we'll be very optimistic about what can be done next year in Brazil. But if we're going back to the small billions that are mostly false solutions and dangerous distractions, with what you said earlier, with the industrialized countries continuing to increase their emissions and to greenwash their emissions with carbon offsets, which we call pollution permits, essentially, then we're not really taking a step up. We're taking a step down, deeper into the crisis.
Yes, Barbara.
Yeah, and if I can add to that, I think it's also very important to mention here the importance of adaptation and loss and damage in this discussion. We are not only seeing that the ambition in terms of the quantum is very low among developed countries, but it's also they are also not talking about having loss and damage in the NCQG. Well, we are seeing, for example, right now in the Philippines is hit by its 6th typhoon in 1 month. There are people there that are losing their homes, that are losing their livelihoods, sometimes that are losing their lives. These are people who are among the most vulnerable communities, women and girls, and they're the ones least responsible for the climate crisis. And they are paying the price at the moment. It's not that there is no price being paid. There's not as if there's no finance being spent. It's spent by those that are already most vulnerable and least responsible. And that is why it's so important to think about loss and damage as well, to consider it an element of climate justice and to firmly embed it into this new finance goal. It's not just about reducing greenhouse gases. It's also about how communities can become more resilient to the effects of climate change, and to address the losses and damages that they're suffering.
Well, thank you very much indeed, Barbara, and thank you very much, Fadel, for spelling it out so loud and clear. Thank you, and best of luck with the final days of the COP. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And now let's move on.
Well, here we are again at the end of another incredible day of broadcasting from COP29 in Baku, Azerbaijan. We have just one day to go before we say goodbye to this beautiful city, and I must say we all agree, really nice people that we've met here from Azerbaijan. But let's stick to our real motivation for being here, the UN Conference on Climate Change, COP29. We've been here broadcasting today, and we have been in the past week also talking to fascinating and insightful people who came to Baku to make a difference on the climate crisis.
So let's now turn to our friends in Stockholm, David and Christina, because we'd like to hear your takeaways from this second to last day here at the COP from our broadcast. So David, what are your thoughts, please?
Yeah, real quick, I really admired and liked the discussion with Johan Rockström and Johan Falk and Ingmar Renshaug. And one thing that was said there was that we have so many pledges that we've been giving over the years. Companies, countries, politicians pledging. And I wonder, when does it stop? Or is, the bucket or whatever where we put all those pledges, is it infinite? Or will it at some point be so full that we're reaching a tipping point? And I do believe, and this is really only my gut feeling, I do believe that we are reaching that tipping point now, and we are going to see some incredible action going forward. And also one thing that Rockström just briefly alluded to, the Montreal Protocol happened because not everyone agreed at the same time, but there were front runners, and they showed the way. And that is what I think we will see in a very strange and scary future in many senses, but I also think we will see concrete action in 2025 going forward, where we'll have the front runners leading the way. I think the time for action is now. It's been said many, many times, but I do have the gut feeling that this is truer now more than ever. The bucket with pledges is full.
Thank you, David. Thank you for sharing that positive gut feeling. We need some positivity to keep us going here at the final days. So, Christina, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I also have some reflections on the session with Johan Rockström and McKinnon, and they were talking about that the era for fossil fuels are over. It's just a matter of time to get away from it. And he's very clear, Johan, on that there is a corridor of life that we are leaving. 14 plus minus half a degree, and we are now plus 1.5. So they had a number of things they talked about, like policy diffusion, that small countries can come up with good policies that we pretty fast could diffuse to big countries. They talked about accelerating green demand, which is also very important because then business will transition. And I would like to add cutting brown demand. And in that, today we have the Tourism and Transport Day. And in this Christmas, in Sweden, people are traveling abroad for warm, nice summer holidays in the middle of the winter. The demand has gone up 60% in the last 3 years. So my wish for Santa, if I have one, is actually to give everybody a green demand present. And for those going abroad, they should offset with something really good those trips they do to far, far away countries.
Thank you, Christina.
That was my reflection.
Thank you. So we have with us Emma Renshaug, as always, co-founder and CEO of Wouldn't Have Time. So what are your thoughts about today?
I can just reflect on what Christina just said. They can also take the train. There's always a greener alternative. You don't need to stop doing things. You can just buy something different that will give you something similar. Myself and my family, we will take the train to Paris. This Christmas it will not be that warm, but it will be nice. But sometimes you need to fly, like here to Baku. It's very hard to get here by train. I don't think it's even possible. When you do that, you can upgrade for biofuel. There's always a better alternative, and if people are starting to demand that better alternative, we will change the world. So every time you vote means every time you spend your money. It's that simple. We don't need to wait 4 years for another president in the United States or another country, and there's a lot of countries you can't even vote. But all countries on this planet have money. And how you spend it decides the future we will all have. And it's impossible to switch from a very, very bad thing to a very, very good thing, but we can always choose one better alternative in the right direction. And if everyone do that, we will solve this. That definitely will help. So move the money. Every time you use the money, move the money. And if the greener alternative is too expensive, do something else. I mean,
that's a good point.
There's many things you can do that are fun. You don't need to do exactly that if you can't afford it. But what I'm also saying is some luxury, because those people that have too less money, so everything is about surviving, they can't do that choice. I mean, they can't afford the choice. You need to eat, and you need to live, etc. So we should use the money if we have enough money to use it, but we should also use the voice to give everyone a chance to create a better future.
Thank you, Ingmar.
I was just going to say, it's so clear this. I mean, I have to tell you, I met a 12-year-old girl in Berlin just recently with her parents, and she was wanting to know what can she do for climate change. And I said, well, you can influence your fellow students at school, but actually your superpower is ask your parents right now where they bank. And she said, Mummy, Daddy, where do you bank? And the mum went, well, we bank at Deutsche Bank. I went, they're not one of those banks that's not investing in fossil fuels. And the little girl said, what do you mean? I said, well, ask them if they could move their money to Triodos Bank in Germany, where they have branches. She said, are you going to do that, Mum and Dad? And he went, okay. I said, here's the online address. And they did it the next day.
Brilliant.
They moved their money out of Deutsche Bank into Triodos because that little girl said, do it, Mum and Dad. Yeah.
Brilliant. So, Ingmar, what are your biggest hopes and fears for the final days here at the COP? You're leaving tonight.
My biggest hope and fear is same thing, actually. And I don't really know if I'm hoping for it, but maybe we need it. Maybe we need a big failure in order to get our grip together and realize that we need to do something else to get things moving. I think that is becoming more and more clear. I don't think this will be a completely failure. We had some progress on Meeting and others. It's a step in the right direction, but it's still mostly pledges. Or is it only pledges?
So far.
And that bucket is full. So we need to realize that the time for pledges is over. We need to do legal binding things. And I don't agree with the criticism that COP meetings are meaningless because it's only happening pledges. If we don't have COP meetings where everyone are meeting, where once a year we have the global agenda about climate, we will not have a meeting where we can discuss that we need to have something better. We will have nothing. So we need COP, we need to protect COP, but we also need to develop COP to become something better, but we need to protect it. So my hope and fear is that COP can only become better from here, and we need to do that, and we need to protect this. This is an incredible, important forum, and I want to give huge credit to UNFCCC and all the organization and all hosting countries as well. This is so important. And many are also criticizing that those COP meetings are in parts of the world where there's coming oil literally from the ground. I think we can maybe have a competition where we actually host those meetings in the best country in the region, so it's become a competition. But I also see that it's very good for us in the climate movement to experience how it is to live in a country that is not super rich, and basically the only thing they have of value is in the ground, that oil. It's give another perspective. It's not black and white, but we still need to face it out. But we need to respect that we have different things, and we need to do this in a just way. So that's my reflection.
Well, thank you very much, Ingmar, and also thanks to Christina and David for your insights. And now let's move on.
Hello and welcome to our little wrap-up session here from COP29. Today we interviewed Deputy Franz Fayo from the Luxembourgish Parliament and hear his message to push delegates beyond their red lines.
I think there is no mystery in this. You have to make a lot of noise. I think you have to annoy politicians. You have to be you have to make your voice heard by writing, by taking to the street, by using social media. I think also, and I'm afraid that increasingly also legal action will be required. There is the case that the seniors brought in Switzerland that has been successful. Young people also have taken to the courts to claim climate goals in court. And so I think it is all these levers that need to be actioned. But you really need to organize yourselves, articulate your demands and your claims, and then bring them to politicians. And if they don't react, you have to insist. Once again, take to the streets, organize social media campaigns, maybe take to the courts to make your voices heard.
So yesterday we had the honor to interview the Deputy Prime Minister from the Netherlands. So hear what she has to say to you, the young people.
It's a tribute to young people. So should we be afraid? What can we do against the climate crisis? And where's our place in all of this?
Well, your place in all of this is extremely important because what motivates me is that I want to make sure that I give this, well, my country, I'm a Dutch minister, but also, of course, the world, the planet, I make sure it's clean and it's a nice place to live and it's green and sustainable for future generations, for you, of course. So that's what motivates me, and that's why I'm doing this job, and that's why I'm here this week in Azerbaijan.
Okay, thank you. And what can young people do? I mean, what actions can we take to try and fight the climate crisis?
Well, of course, being here and discuss with us, with leaders from different countries, what needs to be done. But I think that's really important. It's also important for you to talk with us about action, because we all know that we have to do something. Well, and a lot of things are happening, of course, right now. It's not that we are in the beginning. We are already working, but we have to keep on working. And it's about taking action, keep on taking actions, and let's discuss that part of the climate emissions we have.
Additionally, Maximilian had the honor to participate at a panel to raise our voice, our Luxembourgish youth voice.
Today, I participated in a panel discussion on how youth can influence climate change at the Nordic Pavilion. This was part of our ongoing collaboration with a group of Norwegian youth delegates. These delegates are part of their country's children's panel on climate change. The panel every year prepares a report based on surveys and opinions from children in Norway to deliver to politicians along with a list of demands. They were incredibly inspiring young people and we're very lucky to have exchanged with them. At the panel discussion, I also met 2 young activists from Zambia who reminded us that while for us the climate crisis might mean snowless winters, slightly hotter summers, and more intense rainstorms, for some it means death and destruction. Both of those activists had lost relatives in floods that had swept Zambia the year before, and one of them could no longer continue his schooling due to the impact on agriculture of the climate crisis, which stripped his parents' income away and made them unable to pay his school tuition. It is stories like this that remind us why it's incredibly important that we all fight the climate crisis together, and why it's incredibly important that you engage yourself and do everything you can to help these people. Because again, it might not snow for you this winter, but some people might lose their siblings, their friends, their parents, and that's something we can't allow.
Thank you very much for watching, and stay tuned for the next sessions with brand new interviews.
我是天气预报员曾一格，下面由我来告诉你们2050年的天气会是什么样的。根据 IPCC 组织报告预测，2050年的天气会和现在很不一样哦。首先，天气会变得更热哦，全球平均气温可能比工业化前高出2度以上，这就意味着夏天热起来会更吓人，有可能出现更多的热浪。而气温升高，我们最先想到的就是那些冰川会融化。据预测，到2050年，近一半的冰川将消失，海平面会升高0.2米左右。到2150年，则为1米甚至更高，可能有几亿人需要重新寻找家园。 气候变化也会导致生物多样性发生巨大的变化。有很多动物我们可能再也见不到了，例如北极熊就会因冰川融化导致捕食范围缩小，缺乏食物，生存受到严重威胁。在未来，极端天气事件将成为常态，极端高温和暴雨、洪水等灾害天气会更频繁地发生，影响甚至威胁到地球上所有的生命。还记得吗？2022年，强风暴尤尼斯袭击了多个国家，速度达到了每小时196公里，创英国有史以来最大阵风记录。2022年6月到8月，持续降水导致巴基斯坦约1/3的国土被淹没，而这些极端天气在未来会成为普遍现象。各位叔叔阿姨们，不要浪费时间，快点行动起来，解决问题吧。比如各位建筑师叔叔阿姨们，你们可以多建造采用隔热材料的绿色建筑。听说这种房子冬暖夏凉，这样大家就可以少开空调了。我们要一起保护我们的地球，这不只是天气预报，这是我们的未来。
Be cool, it isn't a joke to walk in the woods, without all the smoke. I love to swim, but not in a flood. We can't grow a crop down in the mud. I want to be cool and get the job done, so we don't get left out to bake in the sun. Let's plant some trees and make some shade from the ground up. That's how change is made. I want to be cool, how about you? Together there's not one single thing that we couldn't do. Take care of the earth and each other too. Working together, we all can be cool. I want to be cool, it's gotten too hot. I'm joining the movement to save what we've got. So every girl and every boy can live a good, long, healthy life and find some joy. I want to be cool, how about you? Together there's not one single thing that we couldn't do. Take care of the earth and each other too. Working together, we all can be cool. Leaders, it's time to lead. Listen to your people in need. The whole world is sweating this out. Can't you hear your kids starting to shout? I wanna be cool, how about you? Together there's not one single thing that we couldn't do. Take care of the earth and each other too. Working together, we all can be cool. I wanna be cool, how about you? Together